We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If everybody could grab a seat and we'll start. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Chapter House for the 2021 annual meeting. I'm Scott Riefstack. I'm chairman of the board, directors, and I graduated in 1976. I'm from Tolono area. I farm. So why don't we go ahead with the introductions? Kevin, you want to go next, and we'll just go around the room. And so I'd like to welcome everybody, and there will be a reception afterwards at Papa Del's Pizza, and pizza will be served around 4 o'clock. We do have the room earlier than that, so whenever we're done here, we'll kind of matriculate over there and go from there. Next, Greg, Secretary's report. Last year was an online meeting for the first time that in Nabor House history because of the COVID. We had a pretty good turnout, and we had a lot of alums from way out of state, Florida, Colorado, California, that don't normally make the meetings that showed up, so we were real happy with that. Does anybody have any corrections or additions? Is there it's been moved that they be approved. Is there a second? There's a second, Tom Kelly. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next is business agent report. Larry? I would entertain a motion to accept the financials. Ken McMillan moves. Is there a second? Jim Traub. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. And that kind of brings me to the next thing on the agenda. In 1976, Sam Riven contacted me and Larry and asked us to do an audit of the fraternity. Well, little at that time, us being young kids, we didn't realize what was really going on, and Sam was auditioning a business agent. And in 1981, Larry officially took over the reins for Sam as business agent. 40 years later, he officially stepped down this morning. So thank you, Larry. Dylan Reitz is now business agent. And as a small token of appreciation from the fraternity, it says simply, Nabor House Fraternity recognizes Larry Dallas in appreciation of 40 years of service as business agent. Thank you.
I had no plans to do this job that long. The longer I did it, the harder it was to quit doing it. But, I always said that I got more out of Nabor House. It contributed so much to the person that I became that I enjoyed doing the job and felt like I was giving something back. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Craig, you want to do the scholarship awards?
Okay, if you don't know me, I'm Craig Pessman. I live here in Champaign, been involved in helping with the house in several different aspects over the years, and much like Larry said, you know, some of us got involved and stayed around a lot longer than expected. And I think, before I talk a little bit about scholarships, I think as we talk about the future of the house and the importance of killing off this mortgage and getting things done, that's going to be important for the growth of the house. And I really encourage our membership to take a look at how they can support that. Some of us give time, some of us give talents, some of us give financial donations and those types of things. But I think it's important that everybody thinks about what their role is with the house and how they can help continue what's done here. One of the things that Kevin and myself and a couple other gentlemen have the opportunity to do every year is to do scholarship interviews. And that gives us a little bit of an insight in a way that many of the rest of us can't have into the type of young men that we have here at the house. It's never an easy process. I know Kevin would agree with me. I'm sure that when we get done with interviews, we'd love to give scholarships to everybody that applied. We don't always have that opportunity, of course. So that's a tough decision many times. And I think by finishing off the mortgage of the house, paying those loans back to the foundation, it gives us opportunities to do more things with scholarships and help additional young men here at the house, which can help with recruiting and those types of things. So I know there's a much larger population than those of us sitting here today, but I think it's very important for us to think about accomplishing that goal, and because it's going to be good for us in many different ways. So I'd like to take a moment just to tell you a little bit about the scholarships that we have this year. One of the scholarships that we give out is a freshman GPA-based scholarship. So those guys are coming into the house. They really don't have the resume that the other guys do, so we do that based on a GPA coming in. And Reagan Camp is our GPA winner this year. Then the other applications that we have that we actually get applications and do interviews with. Last year we did Zoom interviews. This year I think they were all in person, I guess. Yeah, we had everybody in person this year, even though we had the option. So our sophomore award is Jay Rosentrader. Our junior is Joseph Biratier. Our senior is Sean Welch. And our Ellery Connect winner is Luke Crane. And I'd like to congratulate all of those people. They had excellent applications and are good representatives of the house. You'll hear a little bit more later on from Victor on Ideal Neighbor Award. And one of the things that happens there's also a $1,000 scholarship that's associated with that, due to a generous donation that was made to the University of Illinois Foundation that funds that scholarship every year. So we do some good things towards the house. We try to take care of the funds that have come into the foundation, but also distribute them back out to our membership to take care of things and to help our members have a little easier time paying for their school. The other thing I would mention, I also happen to be the keeper of the Neighbor House database, which is always an interesting challenge to keep track of our moving neighbors, sometimes whether they be older or younger. And so if any of you are not getting U.S. postal mail, for when we still use that, or email, which we want to use as much as we can, if you're not getting those, make sure that we have your current information. There's a couple of ways to do that. You can get a hold of Scott, get a hold of me, anybody on the board. You can get a hold of the house, or you can go out onto neighborhouse.com and there's a form there to update your information and make sure we have it. So if you're not getting those kind of communications from us, it probably means that we've temporarily lost you. And I do some detective work through Facebook and LinkedIn and those types of things to find people, or I might get a hold of somebody in the pledge class and say, hey, do you know where your pledge brother is? But there's some people that I have lost track of, and we'd love to make sure that we're in touch with them. And to be very candid about it, as we talk about our fundraising efforts, we want to make sure that we're talking to as many people as we possibly can. So if you'll do that, I'd sure appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Victor, you want to handle Ideal Neighbor and the bronze tablet?
Okay, my name is Victor Johnson. I am a member of the pledge class of 2007 and a graduation class of 2011. I've been serving as house advisor since, probably about 2014 in an official capacity. We had a need at the time and I had volunteered. And in the last couple of years, I've also served as vice president on the board. I'm going to get to Ideal Neighbor here in just a moment, but before I get to that, I wanted to point out we have another Bronze Tablet award winner this year with the university. This will be our 19th Bronze Tablet in the history of Nabor House. There's a plaque on the side there showing all of the past 18. The Bronze Tablet winner this year that we're recognizing is Nicholas Close. You may have heard Nicholas's name in past editions of the Nubbins or on social media. Nick had graduated in December, and he was a 3-time winner of the Ideal Neighbor Award. I'll get to more on the Ideal Neighbor Award later, but basically his peers recognize him as a very quality member of Nabor House. I'll go over a little bit about the Bronze Tablet requirements. A Bronze Tablet winner has sustained academic achievement and is recognized by inscribing the student's name on the bronze tablet, which hangs on the wall of the main library. To qualify, undergraduate students must have at least a 3.5 cumulative grade point average for all work taken through the University of Illinois. And they must rank on the basis of their cumulative grade point average through the academic term prior to graduation in the top 3% of their class. So Nick has obtained a 3.5 GPA throughout his entire time at U of I and has also graduated in the top 3% of his class. So we congratulate him. It's certainly a recognition well deserved. He couldn't be here today, but I'll make him aware that we recognize him today. I also wanted to share, going back to Nick, every year we ask guys to give a few kind words and things that they'll remember their graduating seniors for. And recognizing that Nick was such a quality member of Nabor House, I wanted to read a few things that people had written. One person said regarding Nick, "You are an ideal neighbor. You gave so much to this house and tried every day to make it better. The way you stick to your values is so admirable. Your work ethic is something I hope to have half of someday. You bring everyone together, you never make enemies, and you treat others way better than most. I love you, and I wish you so much happiness in the future because you deserve it." So, congratulations, Nick. Moving on to the Ideal Neighbor. The Ideal Neighbor Award is an award we give out here at Nabor House, and it's a peer-selected award. Basically, every spring, I as advisor put together a voting sheet that we send out to every member of the House, and they rank their fellow House members based off of 5 ideals: integrity, dedication, excellence, attitude, and leadership. This is an award that we've been giving out since 2004, and it does a great job to recognize those neighbors who really go above and beyond their call of duty to contribute all that they can to the House. They rank each member based on a scale of 1 through 5 on each one of these values, and then we tally up the total votes and create a cumulative aggregate score, and we recognize that person. And as Craig had mentioned, this person also now receives a $1,000 scholarship. So they're asked to vote on integrity, which they define as someone who lives with integrity and leads by example. Dedication, a person who does more than his share of the work, yet seeks less than his share of the credit. Excellence, takes pride in doing the best he can do as a student, leader, and a neighbor. Attitude, uses a positive attitude to promote house harmony. And in leadership, they respect each individual and is an effective leader in serving others. So before I get to the winner, I always recognize the 4 runners-up as well. The runners-up this year were Joseph Beertier, Jonah Miller, Sean Welch, and Jonathan Myers. Joseph Beertier was he was president and just finished his term from, he was actually elected to 2 terms, both the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021. So he just finished before Jonah took over. So Jonah is also a current president. And then Sean is a upperclassman, and he was recognized as being, he took over the job of commissar as an upperclassman, which is, we all know is a pretty thankless job, and he was also significantly involved in the Big Rush chair. And then Jonathan Myers just graduated. He, I believe, was vice president at one time, and he was also on exec board. He was a great senior leader to have in the House. So Typically what we see here is we see the people recognize that really do deserve it, and I think this is a great group of guys to recognize. So congratulations, Jonah, as well. So moving on to our winner this year is Luke Crane. Luke Crane's from Forest, Illinois. He was a major in ag econ. He just recently graduated. I spoke with him just recently. He was unable to be here because he's actually attending a wedding. But he is employed currently with the Illinois Farm Business Farm Management here in Champaign, and he is the newest field staff within the Champaign office. So he's actually living here locally in Champaign, which is pretty awesome. And he was the fall 2019 president and was reelected again to be spring 2020 president right when all of the COVID chaos began. So Luke and Joe and now Jonah were all very good leaders trying to navigate through this COVID situation. I can't thank the chapter more for how much they were willing to put up with all the restrictions, a complete loss of their social life on campus, and it's really been a difficult job. So we thank them, and we thank Luke for and award him for being recognized for his great leadership during this time. And just like for Nick, I went through and I've tried to find some of the words that people had written for Luke in recognition of his leadership. Someone wrote, Luke is one of the most down-to-earth guys I have ever met. He is always willing to talk and offer any advice. He has an ability to make everyone feel included in whatever event is going on. And then another person wrote, Luke has always gone above and beyond making sure that I feel included in the house. Even though I've only known him for less than a year, I know that I could talk to him about anything. He has been a great influence on me, and I look forward to seeing what he accomplishes in the future. His positive attitude and hard work ethic will be missed. And that is why Luke is an ideal neighbor.
It's my honor to present this Good Neighbor Award to Jay Hageman. And as you know, Jay left us all too early, October 9th of 2018. I just remembered back, September of 1970, I met Jay in this parking lot. Excuse me. Apologize for breaking up. I met Jay as an incoming freshman in this parking lot out here at 1002 South Lincoln. First thing I noticed was his smile. How could a guy smile all the time? I could not believe it. And after knowing him, you know, for close to 50 years, that smile was always there. Now, a little bit about Jay. He was a type of individual that always thought outside the box. I can tell you, Jay and I, we had many discussions on everything from farming to politics, and probably more often than not, we disagreed. Remember a few years ago, Jay said he was going to support a certain black candidate for president, and it wasn't Mr. Obama, it was one before him, and I tell you, I just about fell out of my chair. So we discussed it, and we discussed it. So Jay and I can't tell you how many times we had coffee, beers, lunch, whatever, and we would have open discussions. We talked about filling the house. 30 years ago, Jay told me we got to go co-ed. We had some discussions about that. Maybe he was right, because he was thinking outside the box at the time. A little bit, and as you obviously aware, I was very close to Jay, but he was more than just a good friend of mine. He was frankly a very outstanding businessman, and some things that a lot of people don't know. He had 2 successful farm operations. E-Agco out here at Seidel, Illinois, employing 4 or 5 employees. And believe it or not, he had a farm operation in Prince Edward Island in Canada. what in the world was a guy from Champaign area farming in Prince Edward Island? He told me he and his wife Trace visited there, stepped on the soil and says, hey, I can grow corn and beans here. And he did. And there's a lot of challenges. First of all, the Canadians don't really care for US citizens to have land ownership. So he had to go out and find some Canadian partners, and he did. Second of all, they raised potatoes and some corn. But Jay was successful in introducing soybeans. There's a story that his first year, he let his farm operators plant the beans. They planted them way too thick, lost the whole crop due to white mold. Next year, Jay was up there showing them how to do it at the proper stand, and they had a successful crop. So I don't know if the ag history will substantiate this, but I call Jay the soybean king of Prince Edward Island. He was also in the insurance business as an agent and also as a private owner of Honest Abe Insurance in Newman, Illinois. He also had future visions of being a restaurant owner. In fact, I believe at one time he bought a restaurant because he wanted to make sure that little town had a place for people to go for coffee. And that kind of shows you the type of guy, the character he was. Jay was also very involved in his local church, Emmanuel Lutheran Church at Broadlands. I would imagine he was probably a Sunday school teacher for over 30 years, served on numerous committees, various mission trips to various parts of South America. And below a hold, I'm not quite sure how the membership at this church stands, but I'm going to call an honorary member. So I'm going to say he was an honorary member of the Lord of God Sabbath Lutheran Church in Christian Head, St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And the reason I know this, because Jay and Trace were kind enough to take my wife Sandy and I down a trip to St. Croix, where Jay had visited several times and owned some property, and we went to church service with him. First thing you walk in, the pastor says, "Hi, Jay, how you doing?" Now, for a gentleman that only goes to church there maybe once a year, that's pretty impressive. So again, Jay not only thought outside the box in some of his political views, outside the box in his business world, but also he had an outside the box on religion that spanned outside the U.S. borders. He had various involvement in the community. He was director and devout supporter of the Cunningham Children's Home here in Urbana, obviously a member of the Vermilion County Farm Bureau, director of the Eastern Illinois Electric Cooperative. And he served, I can't tell you how many years, on the Nabor House Scholarship Foundation Board. Of course, Craig and I used to tease him. We didn't know whether he was giving scholarships or trying to interviewing somebody to come help farm and work on his business, but it was interesting.
And he always asked the most unusual questions.
So, and you know, and something besides being on the board, Jay always promoted Nabor House. I think he was instrumental in a couple people becoming neighbors because Jay introduced them to the house, a true alumni network. And that was something that sometimes goes unnoticed. The other thing I learned about Jay over the years is his good heart, his philanthropy, not only with time, but when he had funds, and he was a quiet giver. I know for a fact that he would help some people out in certain situations and never really want the credit, but he would do his best to do what he could. And just, you know, in summary, before I give the plaque and the award, you know, he just loved meeting people, and he knew strangers. And he always had that smile. So without further ado, I'd like to have Trace, Dylan, Hadley, Chris, and Jenny come up here. What's that?
I don't think he was really all that good.
I know. Okay, this first, I'll let Chris have, here's the traditional plaque. the Good Neighbor Award. And Tracy, on behalf of the fraternity at Neighbor House,
Oh, thank you.
appreciate you for what you did.
Whoa.
And I'm gonna say what you did, because you also had to put up with Jay. And I know there are times when I had my discussions
I was
and,
gonna say, he's not really all that good.
well, he always had the smile, Trace. So again, I want to thank you for everything. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, this thing's a few, or even if you want, that's a tradition.
Next on the agenda, recognition of the senior class and the pledge class of 2021. Victor?
Okay, before I introduce the incoming pledge class, I wanted to first recognize what, I say it every year, but I think it actually means something this year. What is probably the best class I've seen graduate through Neighbor House since I've been advisor. We had a group of 11 graduate. It's going to be a hard 11 guys to replace, not just because of their numbers, but because of each one of their leadership qualities, their discipline, and just their ability to be good neighbors. So we had a good senior send-off every year before everyone graduates. We go have pizza together and review what it was like their freshman year when they came in, and what they wrote down as what their current life situation was and what they thought Neighbor House would be, and compare that to what they think of Neighbor House as they're on their way out. And we have one of them with us today, Andrew Brewer, class of 2021. So you're our representative of the 2021 class this year. But just a great class, and I'm sad to see him go. But in leaving, they're going to make way for the new class coming in. As I had said earlier, we were set to have 11. Scott later will talk more about the COVID things going on in the university, and I can go into them more as well. But they're having a lot of vaccination mandates, and I know that a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So we did have one member to be decide not to come, and then we also have one that we lost to Illidale for other reasons. But we do have 9 coming in, and it looks like to me it's going to be another good class. So I'm going to go through and introduce all of them. First, we have Evan Link from DeLong, Illinois, majoring in technical systems management. He says that he chose Neighbor House. Between the price and the people I met on my many visits, Neighbor House was hard to beat. And we have Cooper Alaman from Bushnell, Illinois, majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism. He was a basketball all-conference junior and senior year, and his family's involved in farming, and he says, I chose Neighbor House because it best aligned with my views and values, and I feel it's the best fit for me. Being a recreation, sport, and tourism major, he would like to work in a sports organization in his career in the future. Casey Smith from Clinton, Illinois, majoring in molecular and cellular biology. I asked every one of them to give me a few things about them, and he says his greatest high school accomplishment was losing 45 pounds before his freshman year of high school. Favorite extracurricular activity is hanging out with his friends and being involved in sports. After college, being an MCB major, he plans to attend medical school and pursue a career in becoming an oncologist. Ryan Hakey. He was involved in National Honor Society. He enjoys outdoor recreation, including hunting and fishing. He comes from a farm family in Highland. He's majoring in TSM, and he looks forward to Neighbor House because he recognizes they're a good group of guys, and we share a common interest in agriculture to help me achieve my goals. We have Kyle Durbin from Mount Auburn, majoring in agricultural and consumer economics. Unfortunately, I was unable to get a hold of Kyle. And then we have the Van Hovelen twins. Does anyone know Douglas or lived with him in the class? Rod Stoll, right there. So good news is he's got two neighbors coming for us. Caleb first, they're from Milford, Illinois. Caleb's majoring in crop science. Caleb was salutatorian of his high school. His favorite extracurricular was FFA. Their family has a farm in Iroquois County. And why he chose to neighbor house, we see this a lot. My dad lived in the house, and my visit was very enjoyable. After college, he would like to go home to farm. And then we have brother Seth, who's majoring in mechanical engineering. Seth was state runner-up in football, and his favorite extracurricular was football. And Seth decided that he wants to be an engineer and work for John Deere. And we have Jacob Leinberger. He graduated third in his class. And his family, he says that he lives on and helps operate their family farm where they grow corn, soybeans, and pennycress. I also have my own swine business, and I have worked at AGCO dealership for the past 4 years, working in shop and parts and now in marketing. And after graduation, he says he hopes to go back and work his way up in the AGCO dealer. Last, we have Nathan Welch. Nathan has the best hair by far of everyone in the class. Nathan is the brother to Sean Welch, who was awarded the senior scholarship. Much better hair than Sean. He was FFA chapter and section officer, I believe just like his brother. And his favorite extracurricular was football. He comes from a family farm, and he shows hogs and goats. And he's not quite sure yet what he wants to do in his career field after he graduates, but he knows he wants to be in agriculture. So that is the introduction of our 2021 pledge class.
Next on the agenda is probably my favorite part. Recognition of the 10-year anniversary pledge classes. I just love hearing from all the guys. I'm one of the old guys now, so I'll use that term and use it fondly. I'd just like to recognize two members of the class of 61 pledge class, Joe Hampton and Norbert Saltweedle, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys and let you talk a little bit about what the house meant to you and a little bit about the house and how it transpired and how it was.
Well, Joe is the famous one.
That's why we want you to go first.
You started talking pledge class year and graduation year. Like, I think I was here. I remember Douglas was.
Yeah, I expected a lot younger group. You know, I look around and I see all these people that were part of the group when I was.
I knew you were coming.
Oh well, that's not true. I don't think. I think Joe was coming, maybe. What do we say? How much time we got?
As long as you want.
Well, I certainly look back on those years of being in neighbor house and as some of the best years of my life, and certainly was a surprise when I got that phone call telling me that I was going to be part of the class, and because I didn't think I was going to make the cut, but I think that we had Emil Pischel as our pledge advisor, or whatever you want to call him, pledge master, I think they called him at that time, and we had a pledge class of 5 or 6. I better start thinking about it. But anyway, there was Joe and I, and then there was Lynn Lively, and there was John Litherland, and there was Dick Shingothi, and there was Jerry Mayberry, and then, have I missed somebody?
Alan Lash started.
I was going to say, Alan Lash was in that class with us, but he was just too smart and too innovative to hang around the University of Illinois, and he went on to do some really great things, on his own. But I think he ended up getting a degree at Louisiana State or someplace down south. But anyway, the rest of us hung around and graduated, I think, every one of us, and had a diverse graduation and where we all went. I think I should probably update you a little bit. Jerry Mayberry married Alice, or Kay, last name I forgot now, and she has passed away, and Jerry lives down in McLeansboro or near there. And John Litherland, who worked for Caterpillar all of his life, his wife informed me that John passed away about 2 years ago, so we've lost him as a member of the class. We think Jerry Duell passed away. Oh, I missed Jerry Duell a little bit ago. And Jerry Duell went out to Colorado and I think passed away because we haven't heard anything from Jerry. And Jerry was a little bit of a innovator. That's the right word. I came out of a little bit different mold than the rest of us did. And so anyway, but Dick Shingothi is still back up near Chicago, and he wrote a book or two, and I unfortunately wasn't able to get Dick to respond, but his older brother David was in the class with you guys, I think. Then Lynn Lively, I talked to Lynn last night, and Lynn is raising a few cows and a few chickens. He told me that's his wife's project, and so they live up somewhere, what is it? Princeville. And is that all of us now, Joe? Have I got anyway, kind of give you a rundown on our class members and so on. But yeah, as Joe mentioned, our claim to fame is we went to school with Dick Butkus. I mean, he wasn't in agriculture or anything, but
I got to follow Butkus across campus. For PE, I had swimming one semester, if you can imagine that. And when I was walking back toward Munford, Butkus and Bob Easter walked ahead of me, man. There was a clear path all over. But I had the privilege of doing that for a semester. Yeah.
And because Butkus was here, and Grabowski and some of those famous players, why we got to go to the Rose Bowl. And in '64, believe it or not, the Illini beat Washington State, I think it was, in the Rose Bowl, 11-7 or something like that. Pardon what? 17-7. Thanks, Jim.
But to tell you guys the kind of people that come to Nabor House, Norbert's, I'm going to have to watch you get emotional. I'm bad about this. I've never talked much in front of people, so I get emotional. That's not excuse. Norbert's dad and mom were kind enough, believe it or not, to let us take their family car, and 4 of us got in that car, and there wasn't any interstate back then for you guys that are under 65, something like that. There wasn't any interstate, so we headed west in mom and dad's Salt Wheels Oldsmobile.
Pontiac.
Yeah, Pontiac. And that, just to tell you the kind of families that Nabor House people come from. And consistent with that was Norbert's fine family that, for whatever reason, and the reason I say this, because I know he's got a story coming about me, okay? Go ahead. Not the story.
Well, we drove that pretty well straight through, except we got to Las Vegas, or near Las Vegas. And
now, we'd heard of Las Vegas. I don't mean to interrupt Norbert. Norbert's the smart one. He made the good grades. I was lucky as hell to get through school. And living at Nabor House was really my salvation, and I want to attest to that. People like Kenny McMillan and this guy sitting down here that's looked after us for years, and the guy sitting over there. I mean, these guys could study and make stuff happen. And I was fresh off the farm. I've been to St. Louis once, been to Chicago once, to the Illinois Farm Bureau Youth Conference. And coming to Champaign was a big, when my mom and dad dumped me out at Eagle, West Oregon, I tell you, I was
Yeah, but Joe had been to a lot of county fairs, and he was pretty well educated.
That's a different kind of education from county fair.
But anyway, we're outside of Las Vegas, and it's like foggy as could be, and couldn't see 80 foot in front of us, you know. And Joe's driving the car at that point in time, and he gets behind this Greyhound bus. I mean, that's all we could see was those taillights. And I don't know, we went through them curvy roads and got somehow into Las Vegas that night. And I kidded Joe because I thought that he hooked up with some airline stewardesses, but he tells me that's not true. Anyway.
I figured that bus knew what he was doing. I was just going to do what he did, because doing it in the blind's harder than doing it with time somebody knows what they're about. And clearly, he knew what he was about, you know.
Come on.
I knew Norbert was going to give me a hard time about that.
So anyway, we got to California, and again, Joe, it was Walker and Steele, and I forget who all was in that car. Anyway, they had a room lined up, but we didn't. John Leather and I didn't. We slept on the concrete curb waiting for the parade the next morning. And
Don't you feel sorry for him?
a long night, but anyway, we made it through the game the next day. Stayed awake. So,
Yeah.
but the best part was to come home. So
No, we got the third goalpost.
we what?
Goalpost.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got to tear the goalpost out. I had a chunk of wood out of that goalpost
Illinois.
for a long time. Yeah, that's right. We were part of that rackets groups that done that. But anyway, we that night after the game was over, we're heading back home. We drove that in 24 hours, I think, 26 hours.
I mean, we were pretty.
But anyway, by the time we got to Oklahoma, we got stopped by the police because we were traveling too fast. And the policeman said, "You know what? You're the first ones we caught coming from the Rose Bowl." So we were making good time. But anyway, other thing I think about is that, you know, the Assembly Hall was built during that time. And the other thing that Joe and I were both in ROTC, and they even had a couple of tanks here that we would run up and down that big pile of dirt that they dug out to make the Assembly Hall.
The Assembly Hall. We got to see that happening.
And then,
Actually, we graduated through there, didn't we? The first,
yeah, we were the graduating class in that.
I believe.
I think so, yeah.
you know,
Because it was 63 when it was dedicated. It was called Assembly Hall back then. Today it's State Farm Center. But so I don't know. Joe and I both worked in jobs while we were here. Most of the students did really had side jobs. I worked at a dairy farm, and you know, you'd go out and have a date, and you'd get in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then at 5 o'clock the alarm went off, and I had to head for the milk cows. And then during the week I worked at the poultry farm and with chickens, and that was not a very pleasant job. But the thing that I can never forget is Scott was a professor there, and he had these feed trials, and he would take these baby chicks, and they would run them for just maybe 3-4 weeks, and then we had to dump them in garbage cans and put formaldehyde in there, and I'm sure the animal rights people would just go crazy
Yeah.
with what we did, but yeah, we just filled them garbage cans with little chickens. Anyway, Joe, you can tell some stories.
I don't think I want to follow that one. Well, I started, Neighbor House was known in the community for having young men that would do good work. So we'd get calls at the house all the time about people wanting people to come. I remember one of them was the guy that had the clothing store down in downtown Champaign. Can't remember his name now, but anyway, I got the luck of the draw to go to his house. And I found out that people that live in suburbs that are kind of exclusive don't really keep their yards like farmers down in Windsor keep their yards. And he gave me a real schooling on how you take care and clean up and the fine points of taking better care of things. So that was one of my first benefits being up here. I worked at the Boag place where we assembled pamphlets for a while. Then following that, I went to work doing the feed mill there at the beef barns. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was and we'd haul feed all everywhere, and you had to go across. Now they didn't let me do this, but you take the feed wagon with a tractor across Champaign to the soybean mill on the north side of Champaign, then bring it back. But I worked out there for a while. I was making $1.35 an hour and thought I was in heaven because I just found Ann. And could have actually afford to ask her out. It was pretty good. I'm happy about that one. But Norbert and I agreed that the neighbor house was filled with good people that set good examples. And every once in a while, there's somebody didn't really like the way you wiped your nose or the way you did your thing, and they'd let you know about it. But generally speaking, it was good. And helping fix the food, and helping do the dishes, and knowing where the towels are. And I thought about this on the way up here. I'll about bet you that if you did some research on this, that the average longevity of marriages of people that come through neighbor house compared to the average University of Illinois student, I'll bet we kick butt, okay? Because we learned that stuff. I mean, we all kind of knew it anyway, we're that kind of people, and that's why we were there. But we learned that, and we learned the joy of working together, doing things, making things happen. And I owe the university, I owe neighbor house far more than I can repay.
And Joe mentioned, you know, that we had exchanges. I'm sure they still have exchanges, but it's through those exchanges that we both found ourselves a wife.
That's where we found our wives. Different houses,
Yeah.
different days. Yeah. The other thing, I hate to admit this, because Norbert's done so many things so well, and I keep trying, and I keep telling people this, you guys, I don't know if you can appreciate this. I said, when I grow up, I'm gonna do it better. And I still say that. But you know, you think that way, even, and I know you and I are getting to be, well, this guy down here's older than us. Kenny, maybe. Yeah, but Norbert and I are walking across campus. We're headed to Munford for one of our 300 level ag econ courses. And Norbert says, you know, Joe, if we were smart, we'd go buy some IBM stock. And I thought, yeah. I mean, we didn't have $5, and if we did have, Linda and Ann were going to benefit from it, you know? Anyway, but he was so right so early, and that's typical of Norbert's good decision making through his life. And it's been a privilege to be his friend. Had Fred Manhart looking after me like I was his little brother. Kenny knew me when I was still trying to drag sheep around the show ring, and set a wonderful example. And Jim, you guys coming home talking, well, I'm trying to remember your judging coach's name. You come to the house. Waco Alberts. And for those of you that haven't heard of Waco Alberts, these guys can tell far better stories than me, but this guy was a virtual legend. And Schooner would come back to the house and share that with us, you know, let us see that there was.
You talked about getting by a cop coming back from Vegas. Well, we were up going to Northern Pump Farms in Richmond in the University station wagon, and we'd get on the road and old Waco would say, Schooner, 2 weeks ago we were at this place and we judged this class of Hampshire Gills. I'll give you 5 minutes, I want to hear your reasons for why you placed it. So here's old Waco, he's leaving all over. And all of a sudden there's a state policeman behind him, and he pulls over, and the cop comes up and says, sir, you're driving awful fast, you're weaving. Well, he said, I just was listening to Schooner give as a review class of those guilds, and I can't believe you put that number 3 guilt in second place. So the cop finally said, he said, we're a judging team from Illinois, and we're going up to Northern Pump Farms. The cop says, well, next time just kind of slow it down.
Isn't that great?
Talk about giving reasons, you know.
You got a little more time if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Norman.
Well, yeah, we'd have somebody playing like they were the cow or the pig in the room upstairs, and then there'd be somebody giving reasons, you know. So that's the first I ever got exposed to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, neighbor house on a serious side, I mean, it's like it's already been said here, is, you know, what made us what we are today to a great degree, because the people that we associated with, the values that we were led to continue following. You know, when you go off to college, it's really easy to kind of start to give up on some of the things that mom and dad taught you, and so I think the neighbor house is one of those things that kept you true to the integrity of being raised in a good, solid family. And so, you know, it's one of those things that Joe said, you learn some basic skills, but you learn to get along with other people. And that's so important. And then, you know, the University of Illinois, you have these relationships that you establish that go with you for life. And so, you know, here Joe and I have been friends for the last 60 years because of Neighbor House. And, you know, like Ben called me last night and we're talking, and, you know, because I called Dan to get some information about this, and he said, you know, we got to keep talking. We got to call each other from time to time. He said, you know, I talked to Joe, and you know, we have kind of fallen away. So I do appreciate Scott giving us this incentive to reconnect with our classmates, and it's been good.
That's like I said, this is my favorite part. Getting you guys get to see each other, and I just love this part of it. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned anything about the cooking though.
There's some stories about that too. Like the time I made pumpkin pie, and I thought all you done was just dumped it out of the can and cooked it. Well, I didn't go too good. I think I remember.
All right.
Thank you,
Well,
Scott.
thank you guys. We really appreciate the stories, and we appreciate everything you've done for the house. You guys, I remember you coming to the annual meetings and the picnics when I was just a mere active, and you've always been a source of inspiration for me, you along with a lot of the others here. So Tom, I hate to do this to you, but you're in the next 10-year class, and I'm going to give you the floor.
Do I need that microphone? I can.
Well, just so we can record it.
Okay. Well, thanks. It doesn't seem like it's been 50 years, but I guess it has. So when we started, just real quick, Jay Hageman, I can still hear his laugh. And he was the commissar here, which was the toughest job in the world. And I mean, times were tough. And we never had hamburger helper, although maybe we should have. But I remember whenever there was somebody important coming to the house, he kicked the cook crew off. He took care of the meat. Kevin did the vegetables, and Winkler and I did the pies. So we made homemade pie crust, never fail pie crust, with lard and stuff. And we did a pretty good job, but we weren't on cleanup. We made a hell of a mess, but I don't care. What?
And Jay taught me how to make pie crust because he said you can't do it any other way
Yeah.
than the way you make pie crust.
And it was good, but Jay would like, come on, we got to kick the crew out. We had guys, honest to God, they could burn soup. I mean, they were horrible. And
It was never fail pie crust.
never fail pie crust. And we had cake that all you had to do was add water. And then we would take the cake on the plate, and you could turn it over, and just how many times you had to hit it with a fork before it would let go. And it was, we had some guys that were just horrible. But it was a challenge, but we seemed to get by and survive and stuff. Last night we met with a couple classmates, Winkler and Nightingale, and so we kind of kept in touch, but Neighbor House was pretty special back then. That was right after the Vietnam War was winding down. One of my recollections, when I started, I was 17 years old. So after being here about 10 days, Dale Hobb got to take me to the Champaign County Courthouse to sign up for the draft. Still remember that. Not one of my better days, but didn't have to go, so it was nice. But we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of things. I was thinking about trying to tell some stories, and some of the things we did, to be honest, Hageman was involved in most of them, and Ron Starr. They corrupted us a lot. Anyway, we had a lot of fun. We still stayed in touch. Most of our guys are still around the state. A couple of them are out of the state. But so anyway, it's been a quick 50 years. It went by really fast. So thanks.
Well, thanks, Tom. And, it was kind of a revelation. I called Tom about the pledge class anniversary, and my class is next year, and I said, I'm not that old. Do we have, I don't believe we have anybody here from 2011 or 01 or 91, 81, do we? I'm not aware. You're 81? Oh, here you go then.
Well, you guys probably heard me talking up when I was up with the scholarship, but I hate to admit the 81 because I would never want to tell the guys in the House when I was advisor because they thought I was old then. But probably, and from my perspective, I think one of the things for me as far as the House is concerned is really many of my special feelings are what has occurred since I graduated. I had a good time here, of course, and everything too, just like everybody. Got some interesting stories, like the night that a former chair like this was in the back lot being hosed down at 3 in the morning for some reason. And there was a flashlight, and the guy turned around with the hose and sprayed the cop that was there standing there watching him. You know, we had our stories of things like that too, but I think much of my relationship with the House is based on the time that I've had after I graduated and the work that I've done with so many of the young guys. When I moved back to Champaign, I was asked to become advisor, spent roughly about the next 14, 15 years doing that. And I think at one point in time calculated that I had met or known some way directly half the men that ever lived in the House. I don't know that I probably have that designation anymore, given the number of guys that has passed. But that was a special opportunity to know so many people. And when the guys would occasionally invite me to come back over and talk to the incoming pledges or the freshmen or something, I would talk about, and always have talked about, the importance of that connection and that relationship. Not only are you an Illini, which is a worldwide thing and has so much meaning, and you will run into people all over the place, but also the same thing will happen with Nabor House members. And that's something that is very hard to duplicate. I don't think there's probably too many houses that can say the same kind of thing. You know, the book that Sam wrote at our 50th anniversary, those types of things. Those are rare occurrences that we have. I've been fortunate enough to work on the 50th anniversary and the 75th anniversary events. I told the guys at the time that I hope I'm here for the 100th one, but I'm sure as hell not working on it. Those kind of opportunities, you know, at the time we did the 50th, I think we figured that we had roughly 80% of the people that had ever been involved in the House back here for some portion of that weekend. And that's pretty amazing when you think of the connection that happens with that. And I think if that's a legacy that we leave, that'll be one of the best things that we can do in the connections that we have. We see that when we hear these conversations, and I'm very glad that I've had the opportunity to continue to be involved in the House.
Well, if there's nobody else here from the other classes, we'll move on to President's report. And first of all, I'd like to recognize Dana. Dana, you graduated in '50, so he's been around Nabor House a long time, and
Think all my classmates are 6 feet up.
well, I'm glad you're not. So
I like to be 6 feet above.
we thank you for coming, and we appreciate the fact that you're here. Another least favorite part of this job is I recognize that Kurt Harrison from class of '79, he was in your pledge class, wasn't he, Merle? Passed away this year. That's the only update I have, and that Myron Geisler. What class was he in? Do you know? 64. This is the least favorite part of the address for me, recognizing this, but it's inevitable as we age as a fraternity. But we have had so much growth through the pledge classes. Our membership is swelling. It's growing, but I do want to recognize those that have passed on. Most of my president's report was covered in the previous discussion about the property taxes and the rush. But one thing I do briefly want to touch on is the active chapter and their response to COVID. Last year, the active chapter probably faced the most significant crisis as a fraternity, from simply the requirements that were put upon them socially and with the university, and this class and this house responded in a way that was unimaginable to me in the way their spirits and the way they handled the situation and the way they dealt with all the adversity. It was their finest hour, and they did just an outstanding job. Thank you guys. I know it was hard. It was a situation that nobody would have wanted to experience in their college life, from the devastation of their social circles and the way the fraternity had to operate. And just, I mean, it was even micromanaged clear down to the kitchen duties. And visitation and, you know, restrictions on letting people into the house. It's a situation we would wish on nobody, and I want to just commend them for the way they handled it, handled the challenge. Yeah, they've had some problems with rush numbers, and a year ago, pledges didn't come simply because of COVID, and this year we're still feeling the effects of that. But I don't know of a group of guys that could have handled the situation any better than they did. And I think hats off to them. And thank you. And that's really all I have for the President's report, unless anybody has any questions about the current COVID situation or any more follow-up on the pledging and the property taxes. All this situation together, combined, the board has had a very rough year also. We've had some financial restrictions because of the numbers in the House. We've tried to help the active chapter as much as we can. The property tax situation has all led the board to make the decision that we had to complete the campaign for Neighbor House. In order to eliminate the mortgage, burn the mortgage, whatever you want to call it, the board has decided that needs to be accomplished, and it's our most important goal as we go forward right now. And I'd like to recognize Josh to come up. Josh is chairing our fundraising, and we'll go through with what's going on and the process. So.
Well, thank you, Scott, and thank you, the pledge classes, for sharing those stories. Those were kind of emotional and reminded me of my time here at Neighbor House. And a lot of the reasons that you chose Neighbor House, it sounds like, were similar to the reasons I chose Neighbor House. I grew up. My dad lived in Neighbor House. He was on the board. Sorry, my name is Josh Millard, by the way. I graduated in 2017. From Arnsville, Illinois originally. My dad is Brian. He lived at Neighbor House when he was in school, and that kind of put me around Neighbor House when I was growing up. And then when I came and visited here, honestly, going to church on Sunday morning, I kind of knew right then and there that this was going to be kind of the spot that I wanted to live when I was in school. But kind of moving on to what Scott said, it is great seeing everyone here, and we're still attempting to get over the COVID hurdle that we had to go over. But basically, as you can see, we're trying to wrap up the 2012 Build Neighbor House campaign by starting a new fundraiser with the 2022 Burn the Mortgage campaign. And just a little statistics about the 2012 Build Neighbor House campaign. Over $1.8 million was raised during that, over 200 plus donors. And thank you to everyone, whether you're here or not, for all your donation, whether that be financial, your time, all your efforts. So thank you all, and I just want to thank everyone who was willing to help out Neighbor House and kind of make it a secure place for the future generations of Neighbor House. So with that, obviously we still had roughly $700,000, $800,000 to pay off, and we're attempting to pay that off as we go on, but with kind of how we've come about so far. Basically, I'll go from 2012 on. So the house has been here almost 10 years now, and luckily I was around with what some would call the new house. So I was actually able to live within the glories of this new house, as I heard so many times from my dad that we didn't know how good we had it compared to everyone else. But it was a super successful 2012 campaign. Over 100 neighbors have lived in the new house, I being one of them. And I just wanted to be clear as well that all the same values that you guys hold so dear are still an integral part of Neighbor House. Education, cooperation, and recreation to make farm life best life of all is still something they say every week and live by. Kind of going through each one. Education, we tried to calculate how many semesters in a row we've been over 3.0, and we legitimately couldn't even find a number. I think when I was in school, it had been going on for like 20 plus years at that point. So education is obviously still a key aspect of Neighbor House. Cooperation, as Scott said, the active chapter found innovative ways to help out throughout the house. They also found ways to have everyone pitch in a little bit more, especially during the COVID times. And I commend them for kind of all the different ways that they help each other out. And recreation, just getting back to normal and getting hopefully those stories that you guys were telling about heading to the Rose Bowl. Well, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But heading just out with your fellow neighbors is something that I'm sure all the current neighbors are looking to take advantage of. So I just wanted to be clear, yeah, continued tradition, continued legacy, and continued success is obviously something that's still happening in the Neighbor House, and we're looking to continue going forward. And so now moving on to from the old fundraiser to the new. We have the 2022 Burn the Mortgage campaign. So our goal is to raise $500,000 by next October 8th, which is homecoming of next year. And October of 2022 would mark the exact 10-year anniversary of people moving into this current house. And they always had I believe they always had the goal of paying off the mortgage within 10 years. And this would be the perfect time to do it, obviously. As you can see, the mortgage remaining is around $475, around there, Larry. But we've started off hot, luckily. When we sent out the brochure and the annual meeting invite, we've received $26,600 in donations, and an extra $10,000 has been pledged. And I did want to note the $10,000 that's been pledged was pledged by the 2012 pledge class, which was the first pledge class in this house. And so I got a call from Andy Gathman from Havana, who is my big bro in the house. And he told me that I had forgotten a room on the brochure. And I asked him what the heck he was talking about. And he said, we've been talking as a pledge class, and we want to donate $10,000 if we can put our naming rights on the mop closet. So, so the 2012 pledge class, the first class in Neighbor House, will have their naming rights on the mop closet. But kind of the why, as we've talked about all day. The COVID-19 difficulties. I mean, it was a time that none of us would have wanted while we were in college, that's for sure. But it's something that they had to deal with through no fault of their own. Reduce some pledge numbers. I know a lot of students just decided not to go to U of I at all because of all the COVID protocols. So that was one big reason, but obviously the biggest reason is our property taxes. It is our single largest budget item at the moment. It just keeps going up and up, and we don't think Urbana is going to change that anytime soon. It's like we've mentioned, it's almost double any other fraternity or sorority in Urbana, and we've exhausted almost all the options we have, basically. So now we're to the point of kind of why we decided to start this fundraiser. Scott mentioned all the different ways that he's attempted to get the property taxes lowered, but we did get some property tax relief
Well, we got back to where we originally were.
Yeah.
After a 25% increase in assessment.
Yeah, but those are kind of the two main reasons right there: the COVID difficulties and the property taxes. And obviously, we can't really control either of those, but the one thing we can control is the mortgage, which is why we have set the goal to raise $500,000. Just kind of moving on of how to donate. So Dylan Reitz is the one taking over for Larry Dallas as the business agent. And this is just some basic information of how to give. And obviously, if you read at the bottom, the gifts to the Neighbor House Building Fund are not tax deductible, but the Educational Foundation are. And I would defer to Dylan for any of those. So if you have questions about any of that, I'll have his contact information at the end, and feel free to reach out to any of us at any point. So for this campaign, we kind of decided to, so 2012 campaign, they came out with 3 different tiers: the Cooperation Club, the Leadership Club, and the President's Club. So for this campaign, building off of that, we decided to create 3 new tiers: the Legacy Club, the Founders Club, and the Lincoln Club. And yeah, we got a whole new plaque for it. We currently have some members, obviously, in these clubs, but looking to grow that throughout the future of Neighbor House. But I did want to add that, so for this fundraiser, we are not creating anew. Basically, for example, if you gave $40,000 last time and you gave $60,000 this time, you would hit the Legacy Club. You're not going to be starting anew all the way. So whatever you have given in the past to this campaign continues on now. And obviously we have this new plaque. We also have the old plaque that has everyone's nameplates. If you don't have your nameplate on there and you deserve to have it, please let us know. We can get that added. And yeah, feel free to contact me at any point. And obviously, as we move down, there are still areas of the house, not the mop closet, but other areas of the house that are still needing to be named.
There are 2 other mop closets.
Apparently, there's more mop closets if people want to donate to that. But we have 3 study rooms, a living room, and sponsoring a spot. So what the spot is, sponsoring a spot is you pay $650 a month, which is still by far the cheapest ag fraternity on campus. I mean, it's been $650 a month for probably going on 20 years at that too. But $650 times 9 months is equal to that $58.50. So that's basically you're sponsoring not necessarily a kid, but a spot in the house. So we wanted to include that option as well. And like I mentioned, with those room assignments as well, it's not starting anew, it's building upon what you've given before. So obviously, thank you all for anyone who has given. We appreciate all the help that you've given, and it's truly made, I mean, this new house is a huge selling point. It's one of the main, not one of the main reasons, it's one of the reasons I came to Neighbor House, but it just provides a great home for kind of the values that we all hold dear. And kind of moving on, I just wanted to list out all the people who have given before, and I did want to mention a couple people that I accidentally left off. But basically, these are all the current tier lists, and you can see, if you're on there, you can see where you're at. Clarence Schluter, Champaign resident. I accidentally left his name off. Glenn Hall, accidentally left him off as well. But I did want to mention those 2. And then moving on, here's just the current list of the rooms and different areas of the house that have been named. So I once again thank you all who have so generously given. And I just remember when I lived here being able to walk past almost every room and seeing some proud alums, and just remember which ones which ones were sponsoring the room that I lived in most, which was room 3. And so kind of moving on, the campaign leadership is basically our entire fraternity board. So this lists out everyone on the fraternity board. Feel free to contact any of us at any point if you have any questions. I included my dad and Bob Stewart on here as well because they were very influential in the 2012 Burn the Mortgage campaign. So we are kind of utilizing their expertise and their leadership for this campaign as well. And lastly, once again, thank you all for any generous donations you've given, whether that be financial, time, effort, anything basically that you've helped Nabor House grow and sustain for the future. We appreciate everything. And truly, Nabor House meant a lot to me while I was here. And it's great hearing the stories of 60 years ago of how much it meant to you guys. Kind of moving on, phone calling starts this fall. Any volunteers are greatly appreciated. We got a lot of phone calling to do. So if you have any inclination to do that, feel free to contact me. For questions about financials and giving, I would contact Dylan Reitz, the business agent, and that's his contact information as well. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to hear them, but if not, I appreciate your time.
We do have one more item on the agenda, election of directors. The nominating committee has nominated Victor Johnson, Josh Millard, and Chris Kirchner. Chris, stand up back here. Chris will be a new member coming on the board. Is there any other nominations from the floor for director for Board of Nabor House Fraternity? If none, I would entertain a motion to approve the nominees for the nominating committee for Board of Directors. Brian Millard moved. Is there a second? Norbert? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, guys. You're now on the board. One last item before we adjourn. Social hour at Papa Del's. Pizza will be served 4 to 4:15. We have the room available now, as far as I know.
Technically, we don't have until 4 o'clock, but we'll be okay.
But that is, and Papa Del's is on Neal Street. What's the address? It's the old Coca-Cola plant on Neal Street. I don't have the address on top of my head. So, one other little announcement. I brought up a box of sweet corn. It's sitting in the kitchen. If anybody wants some, take some, because I'm not taking it back home. I got enough. Jim.
Kudos to you and the entire board for the challenges that you faced this last year. I'm sure you all had some sleepless nights. It's really appreciated by the
It was a challenge, but all the compliments go to the active chapter, man. So I will call this meeting adjourned and hope to see you all at Papa Del's. And please take the sweet corn. So thank you all.